Hey there, it's Friday, May 10th, and this is Treasure Christ Today. Welcome back. We are in John chapter 6 today, so grab your Bibles and read along with us as we read this incredible story about Jesus feeding the 5,000. So, starting off in verse 1, after this, Jesus crossed the Sea of Galilee, or Tiberias. A huge crowd was following him because they saw the signs that he was performing by healing the sick. Jesus went up on a mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now, the Passover, a Jewish festival, was near, and so when Jesus looked up and noticed a huge crowd coming toward him, he asked Philip, "Where will we buy bread so that these people can eat?" He asked this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread wouldn't be enough for each of them to have a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they for so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, so they sat down. The men numbered about 5,000. Then Jesus took the loaves, and after giving thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also with the fish, as much as they wanted. And when they were full, he told his disciples, "Collect the leftovers so that nothing is wasted." So they collected them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces from the 5 barley loaves that were left over by those who had eaten. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they said, "This truly is the prophet who is to come into the world." Therefore, when Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. When evening came, his disciples went down to the boat into the sea and got in the boat and started across the sea to Capernaum. Darkness had already set in, but Jesus had not yet come down to them. A high wind arose and the sea began to churn. After they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea. He was coming near the boat, and they were afraid. But he said to them, "It is I. Don't be afraid." Then they were willing to take him on the board, and at once the boat was at the shore where they were heading. The next day, the crowd that had stayed on the other side of the sea saw there had only been one boat. They also saw that Jesus had not boarded the boat with his disciples, but that his disciples had gone off alone. Some boats for Tiberias came near the place where they had eaten the bread after the Lord had given thanks. When the crowd saw that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they got into the boats and went to Capernaum looking for Jesus. When they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, "Rabbi, when did you get here?" Jesus answered, "Truly I tell you, you are looking for me not because you saw the signs, but because you ate the loaves and were filled. Don't work for the food that perishes, but for the food that lasts for eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you, because God the Father has set his seal of approval on him." "What can we do to perform the works of God?" they asked. Jesus replied, "This is the work of God, that you believe in the one who he has sent." "What sign, then, are you going to do so that we may see and believe you?" they asked. "What are you going to perform? Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, just as it is written, 'He gave them bread from heaven to eat.'" Jesus said to them, "Truly I tell you, Moses didn't give you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the one who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." Then they said, "Sir, give us this bread always." "I am the bread of life," Jesus told them. "No one comes to me will ever be hungry, and no one who believes in me will ever be thirsty again. But as I told you, you've seen me, and yet you do not believe. Everyone the Father gives me will come to me, and the one who comes to me I will never cast out. For I have come down from heaven not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me. This is the will of him who sent me, that I should lose none of those he has given me, but should raise them up on the last day. For this is the will of my Father, that everyone who sees the Son and believes in him will have eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day." Therefore the Jews started grumbling about him because he said, "I am the bread that came down from heaven." They were saying, "Isn't this Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How can he now say, 'I have come down from heaven'?" Jesus answered them, "Stop grumbling among yourselves. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up on the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they will all be taught by God. Everyone who has listened to and learned from the Father comes to me. Not that anyone has seen the Father except the one who is from God. He has seen the Father. Truly I tell you, anyone who believes has eternal life. I am the bread of life. Your ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread that comes down from heaven, so that anyone may eat of it and not die. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. The bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh." At that, the Jews argued amongst themselves, "How can this man give us his flesh to eat?" So Jesus said to them, "Truly I tell you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you do not have life in yourselves. The one who eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day. Because my flesh is true food and my blood is true drink, the one who eats my flesh and drinks my blood remains in me, and I in him. Just as the Father sent me, and I live because of the Father, so the one who feeds on me will live because of me. This is the bread that came down from heaven. It is not like the manna your ancestors ate, and they died. The one who eats this bread will live forever." He said these things while teaching in the synagogue in Capernaum. Therefore, when many of his disciples heard this, they said, "This teaching is hard. Who can accept it?" Jesus, knowing in himself that his disciples were grumbling about this, asked them, "Does this offend you? Then what if you were to observe the Son of Man ascending to where he was before? The Spirit is the one who gives life. The flesh doesn't help at all. The words I have spoken to you are spirit and are life. But there are some among you who don't believe." For Jesus knew from the beginning those who did not believe and the one who would betray him. He said, "This is why I told you that no one can come to me unless it is granted to him by the Father." From that moment, many of his disciples turned back and no longer accompanied him. So Jesus said to the 12, "You don't want to go away too, do you?" Simon Peter answered, "Lord, to whom will we go? You have the words of eternal life. We have come to believe and know that you are the Holy One of God." Jesus replied to them, "Didn't I choose you, the 12, yet one of you is a devil." He was referring to Judas, Simon Iscariot's son, one of the 12, because he was going to betray him. This is the word of the Lord. Here in John chapter 6, what we encounter is this first incredible story of Jesus feeding the 5,000 men and all of the women and boys and girls that have come with these men. So thousands upon thousands with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he tests the disciples to see if they would trust that Jesus can do anything he wants. So when Jesus asked them to go buy bread, they respond, "It would take 200 denarii to feed these people, and that was just to give a little morsel. How could we possibly feed them?" And in that moment, Jesus kind of says, "Watch me feed them. Watch me feed them with food that will satisfy their souls. Food and bread that when they eat, they'll never be hungry for again. Drink that when they drink, they'll never be thirsty for again." And so here in this sign that Jesus performs, Jesus feeds the 5,000 here, and the people recognize in verse 14 that this is the sign that he had done, and they believe that he's truly the prophet who's to come into the world. Now, how they respond to that is there is a threat to come by force to take Jesus and to make him king. And so Jesus withdraws from them because it's not yet his time and it is not yet the hour to come. Now, when he withdraws, his disciples get into a boat and head on across the sea to Capernaum. And in the middle of the night, there's a terrible storm happening. They're about 3 or 4 miles off of the mainland there, off of the land. And Jesus comes walking out in the middle of the night on the water. The disciples are freaked out. They are very afraid of what they see, but Jesus says to them, "It is I. Don't be afraid." Not only can Jesus take this bread and these fish and just multiply them and feed others, he is in complete control over nature here. He can walk on the water in the middle of the storm. And then when he gets into the boat is immediately at the shore where they are heading. The next day, the crowd goes searching for him. They can't find Jesus, so they get in their own boats and go to Capernaum, and they come and they are searching for Jesus. But Jesus says, "You're searching for me not because of the signs. You're searching for me because you ate the loaves and you were filled." And he tells them a key word in verse 27. Don't work for the food that perishes. Work for the food that lasts for eternal life. Listen, as Christians, we need to treasure Jesus and work for the food that lasts for eternity. We don't just need to devote our days to the day-by-day practices of trying to make enough money to be able to get money to go purchase food, just to do that over and over again. There is true food for us at the hand of God. And what is that true food? The work of God is that we believe in the one he has sent. Believing in Jesus is what this entire passage is about. The bread is a metaphor for belief. The one who believes in Jesus, the one who believes is the one who consumes or unites themselves to the bread of God that has come down from heaven. This is a physical action that you do. It's not an action that you do in the Lord's Supper. You don't eat his flesh and drink his blood literally as if there's something about his blood or his flesh that vivifies you. No, the one who comes to Jesus comes believing. And because of his belief, he'll never be hungry again. He'll never be thirsty again because his soul will be satisfied. And the ones who will come, Jesus instructs in verse 37, are the ones the Father has given to him. If everyone the Father gives to me, they will come. And the ones of those who come, Jesus is never going to cast out. Every single one of those to whom the Father has given him, Jesus will keep, because that is the will of his Father who has sent him. This is the will of him who sent me, that I should not lose any of those he has given me, but should raise them up on the last day. And this is the will of my Father, that everyone who sees the Son and believes in him will have eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day. So the ones whom the Father has given Jesus, they will be the ones raised up on the last day. And the ones who believe in Jesus, they will have eternal life and be raised up on the last day, which tells us it is those to whom the Father has given the Son, to whom are the people who will believe in Jesus, and Jesus will save them forever. They will be resurrected from the dead on the last day unto eternal life with God. So this is where we have to trust in Jesus. The Father draws us to him, and we see Christ and we treasure him every single day. Now, in the midst of this, the end of John chapter 6, some people are struggling with what Jesus has said. The disciples don't fully understand. They think it's something about eating his flesh, literally, and they're really struggling with this. Verse 60, some of the disciples say, this teaching is hard. Who can accept it? They're grumbling about them. Jesus looks at them and says, does this offend you? Then what are you going to do if you observe the Son of Man ascending into heaven? The Spirit is the one who gives life. These words are so critical. The ones to whom the Father has given to the Son are the ones to whom receive the Spirit, and the Spirit is the one who gives them life and enables them to believe. And those to whom have believed, they will be raised up on the last day. But Jesus knows not all of his apostles, not all of his 12 disciples are those to whom will believe. Indeed, one of them is a devil. One of them will betray Jesus. And so Jesus warns them, knowing about Judas Iscariot from this time forth, that one of you is a devil, and Judas was the one to come to betray Jesus. Well, the question for you and I today is, will we imitate Judas and we walk in those footsteps and betray Jesus? Or will we imitate those who have come to believe in Jesus and treasure him and unite our lives to his work for us? That is the true bread of heaven that can satisfy our souls. Love you guys. I hope you have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow for Treasure Christ Today. Grace and peace.